Hello, everybody. This is the Starts With Me channel, and we today are going to be reviewing a parenting video from Jordan Peterson's recent parenting series. And David and I are both parents, and we talk a lot about parenting. I work with people often that are struggling with being parents or spouses or partners or whatever, and it can often be helpful to talk about those things. So we're going to do that. Any thoughts?
I've never read a parenting book. So I have two small kids. I've never read a parenting book, and I think instinctively I've never wanted to. I've always felt like, oh, I'll just allow my natural instincts to evolve. I've experienced this actually might be controversial, but I've experienced with shelter dogs, and I feel like it's actually really prepared me for kids. The practice is different, but the underlying principles are the same. So I sort of think I'm under the illusion that I sort of know what I need to know. And, if I can just keep myself sorted and be calm and playful and hold those boundaries that I need to hold, then I'm being the right kind of father. But then I have moments when I'm like, oh, I probably should know what experts say. So my wife is into Dr. Becky. Do you know Dr. Becky?
I think I do.
Yeah. So you know what? I've never.
Yeah, it's not fair to comment on that either.
I've never listened to a parenting podcast, or if I have, it's been no longer than 5 minutes before I'm like, fuck it, I don't want to. So I don't know why maybe it's a bit of pride, ego, but definitely, so this is, and Jordan Peterson is super controversial. So we'll see what he has to say and whether it's useful, and excited.
Sure.
But yeah, so I'm a newbie to parenting advice.
I was just going to comment on the idea of Jordan Peterson being controversial. Outside of his psychology work, yes, I think in terms of his psychology work, he's excellent.
He's not, right?
Yeah, he is excellent. And so he may not be your type of psychotherapist or whatever. That doesn't mean we can't learn things from him and take some of his wisdom. So let's see if there is any of that in here, and we'll comment on it as we go along.
One more push.
There is nothing you'll do in life that's more challenging, difficult, and rewarding than being a parent. Nothing with greater highs or lower lows. Worthwhile meaning in your life is going to be found in the voluntary adoption of responsibility. Voluntary self-sacrifice. That's the spirit of the functional psyche, family, and community. What does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a mother? You need to know very clearly what it is that you can do for your children in order to help them live a life that's adventurous and responsible.
So there's nothing you will do in your life that is more meaningful than being a parent, he says, I think. What do you think about that?
Yes, agree. I'd say I agree.
Okay. And separate, we did do a video on parenting, do you remember? Or choosing to have kids or not. So
yes, I remember.
Outside of the people that choose not to have children, or people that sadly cannot have children for whatever reasons, this doesn't apply to them. Although it may, but we're not talking about that type of person. We're talking about people that choose to be parents or become parents, perhaps accidentally or not. And it is hard to separate. I think it's hard to separate the reality of being a parent, the beingness of it, from the conceptual framework we have about I am a parent, I am a this, I am a that. Well, when I wake up in the morning or when I'm around my children, I'm not conceptualizing I'm a dad. This is my child. They must do this thing. This is what it means to have meaning in my life. I'm present. Ideally, I'm present with them, experiencing being the father of these children. I'm not lost in the, oh, this is so meaningful.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Kind of
because
idea.
It's not. It's probably you're trying to get your kids to school and it's super annoying.
Right. Which may fit into a bigger picture of meaningfulness, but
yes, parenting is micro frustrating, macro amazing. Right?
Sure.
But is that
coming from someone who's never read a parenting book? I don't know if we can take you seriously or not, but you can choose one from my library over here. Okay. Anyhow, so obviously parenting is meaningful.
Yes.
It is the purpose of our species, or one of the purposes, to reproduce. And I do think, maybe this is hyperbole or maybe this is conjecture, traditional values or promoting parenting is not something we do very much of these days.
Right.
I don't know if I'm brainwashed by my YouTube feed or not, but what do you think about, do you ever talk about this with your students? I know it's sort of out of the context of what you teach.
No, I'd say it's probably inappropriate. I probably don't want to.
They never bring it up though, or talk about it in class. Or...
I sometimes say that, I'll sometimes say that I have kids, and I do talk about it as one of my teaching things is I talk a bit about myself, not just as a tactic to make myself relatable, but I don't know, I find it takes the edge off me and allows me to be a bit more who I am. So I say that. I have a week in one of my classes about propaganda and about lying. And I'm like, is it okay for me to lie to my kids in order to get them to do certain things? You can be whatever you want, kind of lie.
Do you ask your students that?
So it doesn't end up becoming an open conversation because there's 400 kids in the room, right. 400 students in the room. But I do raise the question. I do think about it. So can you lie? Can governments lie? Can parents lie? Under what conditions? But no, not a lot of, no one ever comes to me saying should I have kids?
Right.
That does not happen.
Sure.
And I probably, but if you are asking that, I think increasingly, I'd say it's actually something very really don't be so opposed to it is what I would say. I think it's really an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
The worst and best. That's what Jordan Peterson was saying at the beginning. It's the best, and it's the most important, the most difficult, the highest highs, the lowest lows, all in one. And it's total madness.
Yeah.
And there's, yeah.
And I think perhaps what I was thinking of, the distinction between the beingness and the conceptual thoughts of being a parent are, when you think about meaning and purpose in your life, it doesn't come from the thoughts of your accomplishments in life per se. I achieved the height of my profession. Even for Jordan Peterson, right? I think he goes on to say this in this, but he experiences much more joy and satisfaction from being around his family than he does through his academic professional pursuits. It's not that those don't matter. They do, while at the same time, we're communal beings and we need each other. And there's something about that seems to have been lost a wee bit in our modern discourse on well-being.
And I guess I should just add, however you find your family, right?
Yes. I think I tried to mention that at the beginning, but that's an added, but that is an added part to it of, find your family, find your community, find your connections.
And life becomes a bit easier.
Yes. Yeah. And to reiterate one more time, this is not a judgment on anyone who chooses another path.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I just as easily could have been on that path, right? My wife and I, we partnered up a bit later. And I feel old sometimes, but I'm not that, early 40s. There's 40? There's a time.
Yeah. You are 40, right?
Oh yeah. 42, 1983. There's a time when I was probably thinking it might not happen for me. I don't want to do it. I like my independence, my freedom. I can do whatever I want. And that, powerful arguments for that. We talked a bit about that in that previous video.
We did.
There was a good chance that I thought for a good chunk of my sort of single dating relation, trying to find a partner in life, phase of my life, I often thought it's probably not going to happen for me. I'm probably not going to have kids, and I'll have to figure out a different way to have community and be close with my family and who was my family, all that stuff. So so I understand those who are sort of there.
The therapist in me wants to psychoanalyze David in this moment. Okay, let's go here.
I've distilled the decades of my experience as a researcher and clinical psychologist into the lessons every striving mother or father needs to learn. If you've ever thought about becoming a parent, or are a parent already, this series is for you. Hello. I sat down recently with many mums and dads to personally discuss the situations they were facing with their children.
Our 13-year-old, we spoiled the heck out of him.
My daughter came to tell us that her classmates were bullying her.
The question for me becomes, when do I pick him up and when do I make him pick himself up?
What lessons can you derive from today's discussion? How do you operate effectively as a father and as a mother in today's world? Well, you could say, if you wanted to play sex stereotype, that a mother secures and a father encourages. You could say that a father is radically on the side of who the child could become, and a mother is more radically on the side of who the child is. And that's a nice dynamic, because when you're dealing with the child, you have to be happy and grateful for who they are and encouraging them to be the person they could become.
Whether, it doesn't matter who's fulfilling the role. As he said, these are stereotypes. If we wanted to play the stereotypes, I think what I see playing out with people I work with or in observation is there's too much fixation on one or the other of those things. So my child is not all these things they are supposed to be. So there's obsession with what they need to be, or the too much focus on, I just want them to feel okay.
Right.
I don't want my child to be
uncomfortable.
Or feel badly about themselves or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think the question you could ask yourself right now is, where do you fall on that side of the spectrum for anyone listening or watching? And can you pull yourself in one direction or the other?
So what I find, so I've not seen this, I've not seen this video, and I'm like, the reason I had the facial expression of like, why he nailed it is because I would say I am almost entirely the person who is like, all right, I'm always like thinking about, okay, how is this helping my kid prepare for that next challenge and that next thing? And like, all right, you fell. How are you going to fall and pick yourself back up? How are you going to like train your brain in that moment to be better at falling and like, oh, I scraped my knee, but I'm not going to lose my shit over it. And I'm just going to get up and get back on my bike or get back on my little scooter. So I definitely fully fall into that. Encouragement is a positive way to frame it. And maybe that would be like the biased way a dad would put it, but that would be like, I'm constantly in that preparatory. I apply that to myself and I apply that to my kids about like, how is this going to help you for that next challenge? And that sounds like I'm, according to Jordan Peterson, firmly falling into that sex stereotype. The male father figure is encouraging and pushing forward and preparing their kids for challenge later in life. And the mother is a bit more status quo. I want you to feel good now. How do I take the edge off now? And I find that very interesting. I find that part less comfortable. Like I'm more comfortable with the other forward looking. How can I engineer this scenario so it helps my kid for the next one? And I'm not saying I do that right, but that's where my mind goes. Yeah. I'm not saying I encourage. That's not my argument. It's more like that's definitely where my mind is. Like whenever Levi, my daughter, falls on her bike, I immediately say, okay, how can this be an opportunity to help her gain a skill, as opposed to how do I make her feel better right now?
Yes.
And Michelle is very much, how do I make her feel better right now? And I think and to your point, Mike, just to circle back, you need both, right?
Yes.
You need you need to encourage, you need to accept, you need to, all those things. So I think that's already a good reminder about the balancing act that every parent as an individual is playing.
Yeah.
Okay.
David's experiencing his first parenting literature through video.
Yeah.
It's good.
Wow.
Okay. Let's see here.
I think it's a mistake for the mother always to be the nurturer and the father always to be the person pushing forward. Both parents should play both roles, but that's a good way of considering the sex differentiation.
When it comes to nurturing and snuggling, it's more my role, as opposed to when it's time to play or go outside or do things like that. That's more Nathan's department, which I find for me, it is difficult to play with my kids. How do I sit down and play with his trucks and not feel like I should be doing something else without feeling like I should be washing dishes, I should be putting things away?
Let's just pause that for 1 second, because that's a great example of not being present, being stuck in the conceptual, I need to be doing this, I'm not doing enough, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that woman articulates very well what many parents are thinking. And to take it to the other side, many parents, perhaps, I'm going to play producer here a little bit if I can. Many clients who are stuck in one or the other. the other side of that spectrum is the parent who always plays, who's never expecting anything, who's always wants to have fun and no stress and na.
Yeah, who
That's
cares?
also
who cares?
not
All
okay.
good. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Okay.
Interesting. So I actually that what that woman said, the mom, whoever that person was.
Yeah.
I had those thoughts too, right? Like, you know, you're a project guy. I got hobby. I'm a hobby guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have things, and I'm always thinking like, okay, I'm playing with my kids now, but like, you know, is this how am I gonna check that off in my day? Do I have time? How's that gonna work? And fighting that thought is, you know, I'd like to do a better job of that. But kids have their own natural way of pulling you. If you allow them to pull them along with you, they can really help you. It doesn't all have to be fighting yourself. Just allow the kid to take them into these little imaginary worlds that they create, and it can be easy. Like if you allow them.
Yeah. But if you allow yourself to let go or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back at it here.
But these are some like
really good.
Yeah, so far.
In all likelihood, you're going to be a mother of small children for a much shorter time than you think and for a much smaller fraction of your life than you imagine. While you have little kids, time sort of slows, and it seems like it's always been that way and it's always going to be that way, and that's not the case. You have little kids for a very short period of time, and it is a major mistake not to notice that and to appreciate it. It's the pathway to a future with the least regrets, to understand and be grateful for the opportunity that you have to care for your children while they're little, and to be as grateful as you possibly can for that, because it really is a privilege.
Just being a parent, nothing I was ever interested in prior to this really is worthy of my time or concern at this moment. I don't know if that will last forever, and I'm curious about how things like my career, the things I have been doing outside of the house, relationships, other things I'm involved in, now work into our lives. And I'm very open to the answer being, you sacrifice it.
In the first few months of life, a child has to be in very close contact with his or her mother. It's virtually impossible to give a true infant too much attention. In fact, I don't even know if it is possible. As the child becomes autonomous, can start doing things on his or her own, then you have to pull back in lockstep with the child's independence. And you might say, well, how do you know how fast to pull back? You really take your cues from the child. A mother or a parent acts as a zone of security and predictability and care for the child. And so the child uses the mother, let's say, as a place of safety, and will come back for comfort, for attention, and then will go out into the world and play and interact until they hit an obstacle. And then they'll retreat to the mother to be that island of stability, security, and encouragement. And so then there's a continual dance between outward movement and retreat that the mother anchors. And eventually the child is capable of completely autonomous life. And then if you've handled that properly and you've been the proper balance of security and encouragement, the child won't leave permanently, because you'll establish an adult relationship with them and then a relationship with their children. And then you get to have your cake and eat it too. And that's a good deal for everybody. If you're willing to lose your child as they adventure outward, you'll gain them back in an adult relationship.
Wow,
it's good stuff.
I think what I find so interesting, there's a lot of thoughts. One is that, like, literally what Jordan Peterson is describing is how the physical dynamics of play. The kid runs out, they're doing their thing, they slip and they run back to mom crying, and they, you know, spend a few minutes and they that stuff. And
yeah.
okay, all good. And they literally just go back, and maybe they go a bit farther. And that's what he's saying is like, that's years of years, like, you know, slowly, but they come back and they go farther and they come back and they go farther and they come back and go farther. Like that is, and for me, like, I guess my only second thought is that sounds a lot like what they, you know, like attachment theory, right? Where the ability for a kid to go out into the world, even any, confidently is a reflection or a product of the quality of their primary relationship with parents. Right. So the confident child. So I, you know, in my dog network, my dog rebuild, you know, we talked a lot about sort of the dog's ability to be calm under all conditions is a reflection of the relationship we have with it. So if it trusts you, if it respects you, and you've earned that just by being the best version of yourself when you're around that dog, then they'll be able to handle so much more, many more, you know, a subway, a busy street, other dogs running at it, other kids, they just sort of can handle it because they know they have that safety net. Same logic sounds like it's being applied to the kids as well. When they have that safety net in place for them, they can explore the world in confidence. They know when to come back for help when they need it, but they're also willing to go forward and to getting to push those boundaries a bit. I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. And I think what I mentioned, well, if you are watching, you're likely thinking this anyways. Where do you fall on that line? Are you too protective? Do you hold on too much? Are you too laissez-faire? I think Dave and I are millennials, although I think I'm on the boundary of Gen X. It depends on whose metric you use, but our generation was very much, what do they call it, latchkey kid or something, where you had a key to your house in your bag and off you went. And as long as you came home before,
dinner time.
Yeah, it felt as if you were missing. That was fine. So perhaps our age group had a little bit too much freedom. I don't know. Clearly, there's lots of literature suggesting that modern kids have way too much overprotection. Jonathan Haidt is excellent on all this stuff. There's not enough freedom in the real world. There's way too much freedom online. The parental delusion here is if my kid is in my house, they're safe. And they're simultaneously destroying themselves on their on social media. Yeah. Yes. And it is a bit more for girls than guys, but I do see it all around me. I had a conversation with someone the other day in our Canadian, the Metro, the GTHL, the Greater Toronto Hockey League. I can't remember when they did this. Somewhere in the past decade, they started to remove body checking from certain age groups and certain age skill levels. And that's an example of this overprotective parenting, because we're trying to keep the kids safe while simultaneously robbing them of the experience of learning how to be hurt and to get back up and to
manage physicality.
Not go over,
not be excessive.
Understand boundaries, understand all these things that
super difficult.
It's super duper difficult. And I just had a conversation. I know a family whose son is a pretty good hockey player. He's really small and they don't want him playing body checking because he'll get hurt. And the counter argument is, well, he needs to learn how to get hurt. And I don't mean
or protect himself.
Yes, right. Sure. Yeah. And this isn't, we want them having concussions and breaking their legs. That's ridiculous, right? It's more life is difficult and you need to learn how to deal with the pain that comes along with it. And sports are a wonderful way to do that. Yeah. Okay.
How did you overindulge, do you think, exactly?
Well, we just gave him everything. Everything.
Okay.
We spoiled the heck out of him because I grew up with nothing. And Jamie grew up in a household where things were love.
And
right.
We just don't want our 5-year-old to follow in the same footsteps. Like, see that as an example to grow up as.
I've seen mothers who are at the beck and call of their 3-year-old son in particular. That's a bad idea. Your son, your daughter for that matter, isn't little God Emperor of the universe and shouldn't conceptualize himself or herself that way. That's a good pathway to narcissism. Your best pathway forward as a mother is to not do for your child anything that your child can do for themselves. That means doing up their shoes or putting on their clothes and cleaning up their rooms and helping to set the table when they're old enough to help set the table. One of the mistakes that parents make is they'll step in and do things quickly for the child instead of letting them learn. Now, at any given time, it's faster for you to dress your child, but you don't want to be dressing them when they're 7. Everything you...
I just want to pause quickly on that note, because this comes up also so much with in my therapy stuff and just in general. And I think it's okay when you do step in and dress them and do their shoes and do their tasks for them. As a general rule, that's not a good idea. Mm-hmm. Sometimes life calls for, you just got to go. We don't have time to fuck around. Like, let's just we need to do this now. Yes. And then the balance of, as a general rule, not a good idea. It's okay if you do it sometimes.
So, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Should we get back to it? Or
sorry. This, you don't want to be dressing your kid when they're 7. I remember my dog teachers would always say, convenience now, inconvenience later.
Nice.
Right? So, and I always... So that's why I make that argument. At least for me, the dog stuff I did was very useful for parenting. Very different species, right? Canids, humans, whatever. But those kinds of things, like if I do this for my daughter now, what's that going to mean? Yes, it helps me get somewhere a bit sooner, but does that mean I got to be carrying her knapsack for the next 5-10 years, and she doesn't know how to do any of that stuff? Like, so I like.
It's good.
I like that. Like, sort of just, and that's that, going back to that initial point about always like that a bit of that long term.
Yeah.
What does this mean for, this might be some conflict now, but what does that mean once you get through that? What does that mean 6 months from now or a year from now?
I do think many people struggle with they need control, they need certainty. So this idea of more inconvenience now, less later, they don't trust, or they don't have faith, or they don't believe that letting go of control now and allowing your kids to suffer and struggle now does make it better in the long run. And I would just say, with my oldest child, boy, almost 13, it's amazing in the past 6 months or so has really matured. And we have observed through his behavior that some of the things we've been trying to instill in him are happening. And it's so amazing. Yeah, it's amazing for sure.
But like parenting, like what is parenting? Parenting is a long-term rearing process. Long-term.
Yes.
It doesn't happen like, oh my, Sometimes you're right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like 10 years, like longer. Right?
Yes,
like I think,
yes.
Maybe my mother would say like now, for 42, like now, okay, finally, I'm not as so difficult. I'm more mature. All that stuff. Maybe she wouldn't say it. I don't know. But it's a long process.
Indeed,
it's slow, tiny steps.
And we need to remember that in the moments of tension and fear and worry and anxiety, of where we're overburdening or overdoing or not trusting in the universal.
Yes.
We are animals. We have evolved for this. And we forget that because we watch too much Dr. Becky or That's Not Fair, all these parenting gurus out there who are often very good. And I don't know Dr. Becky, so I know of her, but I don't know her deal.
Think about what this means 6 months. Like if you get mad now and if you get upset and you lose it now, you set yourself back. Just hold on, just play it out, and it's a battle of wills. It's constantly testing your mettle, right? That's what I always find. Am I going to lose my shit or am I not?
Yeah.
Can I hold this line patiently, compassionately, all that stuff, right? Can I hold it? And how long can I hold it for? About something that matters. And then you have to figure out what matters to you. What are those, that's difficult. But so far I'm, very...
Everything you can do to bring the child into the realm of adult responsibility is exactly the sort of thing that you would do if you were reasonable and you were trying to boost what people now so casually call self-esteem. There's nothing that gives a person more esteem than to see that they're useful and necessary and that that's real.
Yeah, that is beautiful too, right? They are useful and necessary and real.
Like you play a role here.
Like you matter.
Carrying stuff around.
Yeah. And I think
it's just
the aversion of responsibility, or the avoidance that our system has leaned on to not give young people responsibility is a disaster. A great example is at my son's school. He has been late. He is always late. So sometimes that's our fault. Most of the time it's his fault. And he never gets in trouble. There's no consequences whatsoever for him being late all the time. And I just had this thought now, which I hadn't thought of, helping him understand the importance of being on time and all these other things. And your lateness impacts other people, disrupts the classroom, disrupts the teaching, disrupts this, disrupts that. And that's not okay. It's okay to be late sometimes. It's just so frustrating. I had a conversation with the secretary. She said, "Do you want us to get him in trouble?" And I said, "Well, yeah, he needs something to happen. This is crazy. You can't let this 12-year-old kid waltz into school late all the time and have him think there's nothing wrong with that." Anyway, and that might help him develop that sense of usefulness. He works, he babysits 6 to 10 hours a week. It's amazing. Yeah, so he's developing a sense of meaning and worth and usefulness there in the school context.
And that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Like, I have value here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
What's
Thank
your
you
name?
so much. Micah.
Micah.
Nice to meet you,
Good
Dr.
to meet
Peterson.
you, Micah. So what brings you here today?
Well, I have been engaged for a couple of weeks, and my fiance already has a 2-year-old son, which means that I'm going to be an instant father to a toddler, which raises a few questions for me.
Yeah.
What is a father? Is it something that you are, or is it a role that you can step into like I'm about to?
Yeah, well, I guess you're going to find out the answer to that question, aren't you?
Yes.
Can you become a father? Is that a role you take on?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's always a role you take on. Being a father is a relationship, and a relationship is something you have to develop. Any time that you spend with your child one-on-one, teaching them, talking to them, playing with them, listening to them, walking with them, is encouragement, because they need to learn to be adults. And your children need to see you modeling how to be an engaged adult for them. Honest and committed pursuit of a worthwhile goal. That's a good way of thinking about what a father should model. Voluntary adventure, that's another encapsulation of the masculine role. The establishment of a vision, the commitment to its pursuit. Resilience in the face of failure, faith in the future, service to your family, your community, protection from the catastrophes of life, and care of the most vulnerable. That's masculinity in a nutshell. That's why the shepherd, for example, in old religious stories is a model of masculinity. Ancient shepherds, they kept the wolves and the lions at bay and took care of the most vulnerable. And that's what men who are worthy of the name strive for. Don't assume that there's a pathway to being a father, just to have a relationship with the kid. And that'll unfold at its own speed. And that is what happens with fathers anyways. You got to get to know your kid. And you do that by spending time with them. And
that's a great distinction between getting lost in the conceptual framework of who I am and what my role is, and the beingness of develop a relationship with this person. Even if it's your kid, it's another human being. And it's not about the conceptual, it's about the interpersonal beingness of these moments. I wish Jordan Peterson was a little bit more into the sort of Buddhist mindfulness language of beingness. He does talk about it, but in that example he just gave, that's exactly what it is.
Interesting.
And so many of the things he says are mirroring the 12-step stuff that we've often talked about. But yeah, what he just said, responsibility, service,
right, that's
community, that's a traditional ideas for sanity in the world.
The other thing in my little tiny exposure to parenting advice, the parenting advice industry, it's a lot of like do this. It's like technical advice. I see like a parallel with the dog training world. This is how you hold a leash. This is how you teach this. It's all technical. How do you teach someone else, your kid or your dog, to do something, as opposed to what Jordan Peterson is saying here, which is your kid to be calm, confident, resilient, all those attributes, you have to be that.
Yes.
You can't ask your kid to be anything that you're not, or you can't expect your child to be anything that you're not.
If you do, you must say that explicitly.
Yeah, say like,
I am not this,
but I'm going to try to get you to
or I wish I was better at this too. And that's why I'm trying to help you learn that now.
Yes. But I mean, even by virtue of saying that, you're probably trying to be that, right?
Yeah.
But that for me, like, I find it very empowering to be like, all right, I just need to role model the right behavior. I also find it scary because our brains will engage in some serious self-deception.
Yes.
And how do I know? Like, I'm telling myself, oh yeah, I'm fairly disciplined. I do this and I do that and I speak in certain ways. But like, maybe my facial expressions say something else. Maybe I have like darker thoughts than I'm willing to admit or even know about, and the kids are picking up on it. Or I'm speaking to, my partner or my wife in a certain way that I don't even realize, but that doesn't register because I'm engaged in self-deception about like how great of a role model I am. So I worry about that. I think a lot about just role modeling the right behavior, but I worry that I'm lying to myself about actually doing it.
Yes. Well, if you want to learn about that, there's many other good videos we've made about catching self-deception, but maybe that's something we'll follow up on.
Yeah.
We got to say goodbye for now. There was a few minutes left in that video. Go ahead and watch it. Or are we going to continue it? Yeah. Part 2 coming up. Get something from Dr. Becker. We'll analyze her stuff.
Maybe it's great.
She's doing the tour. Yeah, I'm sure she's good. But I think she falls in the conceptual, do this, don't do that.
Right, the
stuff.
tactical, as opposed to deep, meaningful. Yeah, that's where fair enough.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace out. Hello, everybody. We're back for part 2 of our Jordan Peterson parenting. My name is Michael.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, David.
Dave, I'm Dave.
Your name is David.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so we finished off last time on the idea of beingness and developing a relationship with your child as opposed to filling a role that you think you're supposed to fill. I think this person's pretty courageous to ask the question that he did. And so we'll go from there.
Just because children know less about the world at the experiential level doesn't mean they're not paying attention, and it certainly doesn't mean that they're stupid. They're not stupid, and they're watching. And you can talk to them. Now, you have to talk to a 2-year-old about the things that a 2-year-old can understand, but if you have a genuine conversation with them, then you're communicating, and that's just steady all the way through.
I want to pause it there for 1 second. One of the gifts that I experienced as I was sort of learning a lot of these ideas when I owned the daycare with my wife, when we would participate in the care of the kids, we weren't the primary caregivers, but was this genuine joy that came from interacting with the kids just out of sheer presence and listening to them and just interacting with them. They are incredible beings. They're smart in their own way right there. They are communicating with you at the deepest level. And that's a really beautiful thing. So if you do have young children right now, maybe you're really good at that. Maybe you could improve on that. Maybe you're somewhere in between, whether it's your children or other people's children. Can you let go of the labels and the roles that you think you're supposed to play and be present with them in these moments and really enjoy their
vibe,
their wonder? Yeah.
It is amazing. Kids are amazing.
They are.
Especially when they're not your own. Just kidding.
Yeah. You can sometimes be less or more connected when they're not your own. Okay, let's see. Let's go back. So topic number 2, embrace responsibility and gain purpose.
There's no difference, technically speaking, between being concerned with yourself in the narrow sense, say concerned with your own pleasure, concerned with your own status. There's no difference between that and suffering. The answer to that isn't to stop being self-conscious, because that's not something you can voluntarily control. The answer is to note that meaning in your life is going to be found in adoption of responsibility for other people and responsibility for the future. Shouldering that load makes you productive and useful, but it also provides you with the sustaining meaning that helps you manage yourself even through times of trouble.
For the past couple of months, he's been calling me daddy.
Oh yeah.
It has an
What do you think of
impact.
that?
It makes me feel a lot more pressure than I was comfortable with at first.
Yeah.
But even though I did feel the pressure, I also felt the conviction that I'd already decided this was the right thing to do.
Like you said, you had doubts. Do you have, what are your doubts?
I am worried about it being too much at once. I'm worried about feeling invaded and claustrophobic.
Okay. You know, people think, well, I'm taking on this responsibility. I'm sacrificing my freedom. It's like, well, first of all, freedom to do what? To be self-centered and miserable? What, and lonesome? That's all the freedom I want. Self-centered, miserable, and lonesome. It's like, so then you take on the hypothetical responsibility of a child, but the thing is they pay you. There's data on this too. People who have little kids.
I just want to pause on that. I do think, again, having the ability to acknowledge those difficult thoughts is admirable. Right. So just being able to articulate the fear is so important. And as he said, one of his fears is being invaded too much at once, perhaps not being able to cultivate his own relationship with his wife or fiance and future children, perhaps. And I think part of being a good parent, if we use the lens of parenting, is to be honest with yourself about those deeply rooted fears and to articulate them. Many people fear that if they do acknowledge those things and articulate them, that somehow contributes to the likelihood of them happening. So if this gentleman entertains this fear of being invaded and having privacy with his wife disappear or whatever, that somehow that will happen. And he didn't say that, but to use his thing as an example. So some people say, if I allow my child to face suffering and see the dark world that's out there, perhaps the parents' intent is to shelter them from these things because they think somehow that'll help protect them and help them be happier, etc. That fear, when unarticulated, is more likely to lead to the bad thing happening, because human beings need information and we need the truth. Yes, it can be age appropriate and we don't want to dump everything on a young child. And at the same time, children need to know what's going on. They're way more, as Jordan Peterson described, they're very intelligent, sharp, wise, capable of so many things that we don't give them credit for. And when we shelter them and protect them and hide things from them, we're doing them a disservice, ourselves a disservice, and the well-being of the universe a disservice.
So yeah, my daughter is always asking why, what just happened, what was that, especially when we're driving. Like if I make I don't know if you noticed this with your kids or when they were a lot younger, but a lot of like, you know, why'd that person honk, or daddy, why did you say that? Or what was that? Just out of curiosity. A lot of whys. Why is it raining? So that's part of that sort of need for knowledge, need for information.
And how do you respond?
It's hard to answer. So some really great questions, like why does it rain? It's like, whew. There's like the proximate causes, okay, like moisture from the ground being sucked up by the or evaporated by the sun. It goes up, turns into clouds, comes out. And then there's like the deep cause, like why does it rain? Like what's rain's purpose? Is like rain's purpose is to, humans need water, plants need water, trees need water, other kinds of animals need water to live. So that's nature's way of powering itself and allowing life to grow and sustain its, So yeah, I mean, I don't know. They're just these amazing questions. And I think that's a really cool part of parenting. They really push you to provide info, provide motivation. Well, not provide motivation, but provide a good role model, which I spoke about a bit last time, but also just like insight. Like you got to know stuff to be a parent. I find that's quite hard, and they don't want to be bullshitted too. They sort of like if my daughter's not satisfied with an answer, she'll ask again. Like she'll probe. I mean, she'll just say why? Like why? Why is that? Why? Why it wasn't good enough? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I found that super interesting. One other point to make, is Jordan Peterson's discussion about like what kind of freedom ought we value. He's like, freedom to be self-obsessed and miserable and lonely is not a freedom that we ought to be holding on to. So don't worry about that. Like with parenting, yeah, like I actually worry about I sometimes think about that. It was like, okay, if I didn't have a family and kids, I could be doing X, Y, and Z. And then I'm wondering, oh, would that make my life better? Would that make my life worse? What does that all mean? But I really like that. And I think he's absolutely right. Like we romanticize this freedom to do all these things that in the end don't actually give us a lot of value, or the value they do give is very fleeting. Like it's very short term. It may feel good in the moment to do something, but you realize like just the structure of your life is off, or your priorities are off. So I thought that's a really interesting point to this young father, that don't put on a pedestal of freedom that doesn't make you better, that doesn't give you deep, deep meaning, because that's the source of, I don't know how Peterson would put it, but maybe that's a source of like true sustainable contentment with your life. Is not freedom, but purpose. Right. You're useful.
Yeah.
One thing I've tried, after we had our discussion last week, one thing I've tried to just say to my daughter is, like how important is that? Not to tell her to help, but just to emphasize that. Like it actually feels good to be useful. Like that's where a lot of confidence actually comes from. Like I'm relevant here. I play a role. People need me. Maybe they're not relying on me, but I add value to their lives. I mean, that's really where I think confidence is. The self-perception of I can make someone better off.
Yeah.
Which is I think a really great thing. And if you don't have that,
yeah.
Yeah. So I thought I think that's a really nice way to.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I would add to when our kids are asking us questions idea, to remember the premise of that exactly, is often it's okay to also say, I don't know, or I don't want to talk about this right now, or I'm too confused, or we can talk about this later. Sometimes people either think they need to find an answer to show their children that they know all the answers, and then they end up over explaining, or perhaps making themselves look like they know everything, or etc. Fill in the blank for you. And it is very important to be able to tell your children that you do not know the answer, and that sometimes it's hard to know answers, and that's okay.
Right. The answer or what do you think?
Yes.
Like, why does it rain?
Yes.
Why does it rain?
Yeah.
Or go ask your mother. I love that. I love that.
Yes.
But yeah, no, for sure. Like
asking them questions. That's lovely.
One thing I learned just when I started to be a TA, a teaching assistant, I would actually go in with a lot of, I wouldn't call it anxiety, a lot of insecurity about what I knew. I didn't feel like, I was like, some students can ask me a question about the causes of World War I, and I'm going to have no effing idea, but I had to answer it, and everyone is in the room is going to laugh and think I'm stupid, right? That was never the case, and in fact, it actually made me so much better as a much better teacher when I said, that's actually a really good question. I don't know. Let me get back to you, or do a bit of digging, and for our next session, we'll start off with you sort of maybe providing an answer to your excellent question. So it's funny, we don't have to know. I mean,
sorry, I want to interrupt on that.
Yeah.
You sort of said this. What do you think? Those are good opportunities also to say something like, does anyone else here know the answer to that?
Yeah.
Anyone else got input on that? And you can ask your children those things, or there's a sense of humility in that, I think. And to touch on what you brought up, which is also interesting in Peterson's analysis of, would you rather be self-centered, lonely, and miserable? And this idea that the more we think of ourselves, the more we suffer. And I think in essence, that's true. Although, back to, I think I said in the last video, Jordan Peterson doesn't talk much about the Buddhist ideas and the mindfulness stuff. And I think one of the great wisdoms of Buddhism, mindfulness, is the ability to observe our thinking without being engaged in it. So it's not necessarily true that when you think about yourself, you will suffer and be self-centered. It's certainly likely to be that if you don't have the skillfulness of being able to separate your consciousness from the content of it, which is your thinking, or part of it is your thinking. So perhaps part of what we're talking about or have talked about is, can you recognize when your thinking is very self-centered, self-serving, selfish, hedonistic, etc.? And is that leading to that type of behavior or not? Because sometimes it doesn't necessarily lead to that behavior. And maybe you can start to separate that when you are worrying about losing your freedom by being a parent or whatever. I'm going to stop talking because I think I'm beginning to ramble. Should we turn this back on?
Let's do it.
Okay.
So then you take on the hypothetical responsibility of a child, but the thing is they pay you. There's data on this too. People who have little kids take more pleasure in the things they do with their little kids than single people do doing the same things.
That's awesome. So playing tennis, playing golf, cooking, etc. I like that. As you were talking about wondering if we're going to lose ourselves or lose our interests, or I think about that sometimes. And I love doing things with my kids for the most part. That doesn't separate the inevitable battles and arguments and misery that comes from them complaining and whining and whatever. But yeah, it's a lovely, we are communal beings and we need each other. And as he says, the best source of that is in your family.
And it doesn't,
generally speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you also like don't want to do things on your own.
Yes.
I actually feel like the times when you're alone everything becomes it becomes so much better. in not an escapist way, but it's like, kids being around, it's chaos. It's busy, it's chaos, and you're in the whirlwind of getting them, and it's fun and intense, right? And then you drop them off at school and you're like, oh, I can like sit on the bus and like read and just like reflect for a bit, and it's like calm. And I love the contrast. You find?
I love that. One of my teachers would always say, consciousness loves contrast. And that's a great example, is that we have the opportunity to enjoy that contrast, enjoy the alone time, enjoy the because it doesn't come out of hedonistic, self-centered pleasures. It comes more out of almost a outcome of your responsibility is to get to have that peacefulness to yourself.
So for me, parenting, I would say, becomes the hardest when let's say like I've taught or met with students for like a full day, and I'm sort of like my tank is empty. You have this, you met with a lot of clients, you've given a lot, you've listened a lot, you've talked a lot, and then you go home and you have to be playful, and you may not have a lot left. These kids, like, to your first point, kids have an amazing way to pull it out of you. There's no, they're not, at least my children are so young, right? Different from yours. They don't operate, either they're asleep or they're playing, right? Which is a great way to live. So they force it out of me. But I find sometimes those moments, actually, I think it's maybe, I thought it would be harder than it actually is, which is very, so when I talk to when I talk to you about parenting, a lot of my friends about parenting, it's sort of like, whoa, it's actually not as challenging as like nature has designed it in a way to make it manageable for us. I would say those, I sometimes worry when I get home, like, oh, I'm so tired. Like I can't, I've spoken to so many students. I just gave a 2-hour lecture and I feel like I'm an idiot and I rambled and all this blah, blah, blah. And I got a parent and I opened the door. I'm like, oh, it's actually not so bad. I'm like, this is actually easy. And you get, bedtime and dinner and all that stuff. And then you crash. Yeah. Right. But
I do think it's also okay to tell your kids that you don't have the energy, or to help them understand that, speak for myself, my life purpose is to be here for you. And there's times where that's not going to happen. And your disappointment is not my responsibility. all of this stuff that we talk about always, and I think it's important to repeat myself, is under the lens of we are doing our best to be ethical, honest, responsible, dignified. So this isn't a selfish abdication of responsibility. It's, this is my reality in this moment. I'm too worn out and I cannot go to the park and play catch with you. I'm sorry.
Right.
And even if that would be a lovely thing to do and it fulfills all these images we have of wonderful relationship, with our children, and I'm the best parent, and no. Sometimes it's just not possible. And so, and that's okay.
Like it's okay to say no to your
even if it is an opportunity to connect with them and something they love.
It's hard to,
And so when I do that, I just try to be as honest as possible. I'm too tired. In fact, it's 9 p.m. and going to the park for an hour is not possible right now.
So I had a moment this weekend. So like there's a little window where so I've been like struggling with like my left hip and I need to like do some of my physio, and I had like a little half an hour from like 9:30 to 10 before I was going to take my daughter to soccer. And I was like, oh yeah, I have to get it in now.
Yeah.
My wife was like, yeah, get it in now before we have to go. And my daughter wanted to play like, okay, like she's like, Daddy, you be brother and I'll be mommy, and you know, all like, so the game. I was like so torn about how do I respond. I was like, Levi, I need to get this, I need to do this, but she's also like really sweet and funny in that moment. And what's the right and what's the wrong? So I thought that to your point about like, what do you like, can you in some moments, like I need to be left alone because I have to get something done. That's important. But in those moments, you might be saying no to a moment of connection with your kid, which is super important. So those are some of the managing that and trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And if you do take one over the other, maybe just accepting it and not thinking too much about it and moving forward. And so I find those are interesting.
Sometimes,
but they also one last thing, they actually do understand. Like when I said like, okay, just give me a few minutes. Like Levi, I want to play with you, but just like give me a few minutes. I gotta get my physio done. Otherwise, Daddy's hip is fucked. She's like, okay, and like they get it. Like you're sort of straight and the worst is probably like trying to do both at the same time.
Yes.
So if you're in or you're out, I'm like, hold on, I'm out for a bit. Give me a few minutes, and then
the in and out sucks. And then
we're not
also,
satisfied.
You tend to manipulate the truth, and you tend to make up things that aren't really, And we need to deal with the pain of saying no to our children in moments where
something's not.
And one other thing that I found helpful a lot with the daycare kids, but also my own kids, is to communicate the boundary or the thing that needs to happen through the game. So if I am the donkey or the brother, it's, donkey hurt his leg and needs to go have a timeout for 30 minutes. Donkey will be back to play whatever. And that kind of sometimes helps them. Oh yeah, donkey's going off. And it feeds the story.
Okay. Yeah, you're playing with them while still getting it. Yeah.
All right.
That's a good idea. I like that.
We've seen that.
Kids look at the world through fresh eyes. Everything that you do with a little kid is a new thing for the kid, and you get to see that, and that's a really good deal. And you can become a master of those little adventures that you go on with your kids. If you learn to do it right, there won't be anything that you'd rather do, because it's a very rare adult who is as much joy to be with than a child who's well-disciplined and playfully accompanying you. In conclusion, what lessons can you derive from today's discussion? Lessons for motherhood. Hold them close, but let them go. Encourage your children to go out into the world so they become competent and productive and happy and secure, but be confident that when the need arises, they'll come to you for the care that only as their mother you can provide. Don't worship your child. Care for them, love them, but don't turn them into narcissists. Lessons for fatherhood. Become the man your children want to imitate. There's very little that you can do that's more important as a man than to provide the model for responsible, adventurous adulthood to your children. Embrace responsibility, gain purpose. You're giving up what's often nothing more than juvenile hedonism to pursue something of much greater significance, the meaning that you find in the voluntary adoption of responsibility. So I'd like to offer you a sample homework assignment, so to speak. Sit and write a little bit, a couple of paragraphs, about 3 things that your father did particularly well. And do the same with your mother. Write down as well 3 things that you think they might have done better. And then give some thought while you're writing to how you could capitalize on the positive things that your father and your mother taught you and how you could rectify the things that were less than optimal. I hope that that's helpful in dealing with the problems that arise in the future. My new Daily Wire Plus series, Parenting, brings what I've learned in decades of research.
Anyway, I love that homework assignment.
Wow.
So in the last 5 minutes here, David, any other reflections, or maybe to summarize the lessons of hold your kids close and let them go, be there for them, be the model person that you want them to imitate, etc. What is the ideal behavior there? And the homework assignment is a great one. We won't add any of our own unless...
No. I think maybe the first thing that popped up is I'm not sure how I'd answer.
Your parents?
Yeah. It's hard to... I'd have to think more about it.
Yeah,
Like
because I watched this in
You
full.
thought about it.
I did think about it. I thought it was a great question. That's something I often will ask people.
So
too.
okay, so are you willing to share that? Are you willing to share the 3 things that they did? Your mom and dad did well?
Sure. Maybe I can't think of 3 on the spot, but let's see. So dad, one thing he did well, he has a particular skill at this. He's just so supportive and helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It never really matters to him. He'll say no if he doesn't want to do it or he can't, but he's just so supportive. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, I'll help you. Yes, call me if you need anything. And he does it genuinely. There's no resentment. There's no... because I did this for you, you need to do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
He just has always been there in that sense.
It's nice. It's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think one thing he could have done better, my parents divorced when I was pretty young. I was 6 years old. One thing he could have done better, communicate. He's not a great communicator of his feelings and that kind of thing. So I would say one thing he could have done better, communicate. That's not a fault of his, of course, right? That's just due to the life. Yeah, he grew up as a little boy on his own without a dad and in a boarding school. So that's rough. So that, and then my mom, one thing she did very well was be a role model of hard work and structure. And I think nobility or dignity, sort of always trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
She believed in that universal ethic of noble behavior, worked her ass off. And she's also very balanced and understanding of when people aren't doing a great job. So I think she really helped craft my sense of morality, what is right, what is wrong, and important to honor that. And then one thing she could have done better would be communicate as well. I would say her emotional communication skills were not great. And I also think to expect the post-war generation, I think to expect any generation at any point in history to communicate their feelings is not, it's a very difficult thing to do. Yeah. And I would say only in modern times do we even have the time and space to be doing that because we have free time.
Yeah, the luxury to share.
So I know that draws us to close to the end of the time. Any thoughts or?
No, I thought this was really, for the 16-minute video we watched in 2 parts, I thought it was really, really enlightening. I have nothing really enlightening right now to say, but I just thought it was like a nice sort of like return to nature parenting insight. Like it's like the power of parenting, the power of just sort of like being basically good. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be scienced, right? And yes, he referred to the data, right? Some of the stuff has been studied, but a lot of it seems just to be like common sense intuitive parenting where like nature has designed it for you to be successful and allow the process to unfold. Like allow responsibility to take you in the direction that it wants to take you. Allow response, like we crave it, we want it. Be open to it. Fight hedonism and self-centeredness. Be useful to other people. And I guess maybe the last thing I'd say is I really love that idea of like not worshiping and letting your kids go, and being someone that they can return to, like that. Sometimes I bristle at when I hear like some of my, those in my, friend group or beyond say like, oh, I'm obsessed with my kid. I'm obsessed with my kid. Oh, my kid's the best. Like, oh, I have such an amazing kid. I was like, I know what they're saying. I know they're. I don't mean that literally, but I still don't like that way of talking. I also saw that in the dog world a tiny bit. Like, oh, I have the best dog. It's just, well, no, you just have it never felt healthy to me. Sort of like, I don't know what a better way to put it. Like, oh, I have a deeply flawed child. Like, no, like that's not it. But it's something in between that where you're not putting them on a pedestal. You're not worshiping them. You're not obsessed with them. You're not, you're just be cool. Like, I think that's sort of, if I just would whittle down what Jordan Peterson is trying to say, like, just be a cool parent. Like, let them go a bit, be supportive, be a good role model, be the things that you want them to be. Work on yourself a tiny bit. Don't be overbearing. Be there when they need you. Be aware, but not overly aware. It's all that sweet spot stuff we've spoken about. So yeah, this is I find very powerful. Simple insight into the nature of parenting that I think the sciencey world makes us forget. So I like that. It's more the art form. I like that.
Nice. And I think we talked about it in the first part. It's not a tool-based, here's how you control a temper tantrum. This is a way of being and a way of carrying yourself as a parent. And I think we should end it with that.
And you have to get ahead of some of those problems. Like you might not even deal with as many temper tantrums. You sort of just deal with the making that baseline good.
Yes.
See that in the dog world. If you're solid day to day, you just don't deal with stuff. How do I deal with, barking dogs? Like I don't never deal with it because I don't, just I don't have to, that kind of thing. No.
Okay. Don't forget to subscribe.
Oh yeah.
Like our video.
Links, whatever.
Share it with someone you think may be helpful. It may help. And please send questions, comments, suggestions for future videos.
Disagreement. Like this is parenting's complicated. So whatever thoughts you have.
All right.
Be back.
Take it easy.
Thank you.
Peace out.
Yeah.
We got to go.
Okay.